AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, March 28th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody is doing well today. Well, last week was a very, very busy week. It's been a very busy weekend also. It's a lot going on, and we see things are heating up in Georgia after Governor Brian Kemp signed into law the new voter restriction bill. He did that on Thursday night. The new voter restriction bill that is designed to target African American voters and Hispanic voters and many younger people. So we're going to continue our discussion dealing with that and some new developments. Calls for economic boycotts are growing after Georgia passes voter restriction bill. We know that the lawsuit has already been filed. We talked about that on our Friday show. The lawsuit is already filed. We'll discuss that a little bit more. Also, on our Friday show, we talked about State Representative Park Cannon, who was arrested by the state police there, Georgia State Police. Look like all of them were white too. Look like all white men. State Representative Park Cannon, she's been charged with 2 felonies. For just doing her job, because when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, State Representative Renita Shannon talked about the fact that members of the state legislature are usually present when the governor is signing a bill into law. So she said State Representative Cannon was just doing her, State Representative Park Cannon was just doing her job. So she was arrested and charged with 2 felonies. What's interesting is that there was all white men in the room when this was going down to make it harder for African Americans to vote. It was Brian Kemp who stole the gubernatorial election from Stacey Abrams, so African American woman. And all the other men in the room, all the other people in the room were white men. And behind them was a painting of a famous slave plantation in Georgia. Behind the painting, right above Brian Kemp's head, was of a famous slave plantation in Georgia. I'm telling you, they're trying to take us back to a period of time before the Civil Rights Act in 1964, before the Voting Rights Act in 1965. Some people could argue they're trying to take us back to 1854 as opposed to 1964. 1854 was before the Civil War started. Okay, 1854 was the same year that the Republican Party was founded. Republican Party wasn't founded in 1854. So this is deep that's going on in Georgia. Now you have 42 other states, including the state of Michigan. In the state legislatures, Republicans are pushing similar bills to make it harder for people to vote. Governor Gretchen Whitmer has said she's going to veto those bills. Luckily, we have Governor Gretchen Whitmer, because if you had Governor Snyder, Governor Rick contaminated Flint water Snyder, if you had him as governor, Republican governor, he probably would have signed those bills into law. This is why you have to vote strategically when it comes to governor also. State legislature, of course, but also governor. Now, I guarantee you with 100% certainty, if Stacey Abrams had become governor of Georgia, she would have vetoed that bill that the Republican-dominated state legislature in Georgia passed. I guarantee you Stacey Abrams would have vetoed that bill. So this is all taking place right now. So we have State Representative Park Cannon. She's been charged with 2 felonies. We have a statement from her. TheGrio.com has a good article about this. Also, we have an update on what's going on in Evanston, Illinois. We've been covering the story of Evanston, Illinois, the first state in the country to pass a bill to disseminate some type of reparations to African Americans. This is dealing with a history of redlining. Not slavery, redlining. There's a good reason why they went after redlining and not slavery. First of all, I'm reading through the 77-page study that the bill was based upon, because they did their research. I haven't found any evidence that slavery existed in Evanston, Illinois, because Illinois abolished slavery in 1818. Evanston was founded in the 1840s, but there's overwhelming evidence of the harm that redlining has done. So I was in communication with Alderwoman Robin Ruth Simmons today, who spearheaded this bill to pass the city council. I was in communication with her today. So I'm working on setting up an interview with her so we can really understand the nuts and bolts of this. She was interviewed on Politics Nation by Reverend Al Sharpton, and her interview shed more light into this. So I encourage people, we're going to share that interview here on the show today. We're going to talk about that, give you an update on what's going on there, because there's a whole lot of misinformation floating around by people who haven't done the research. I'm listening to what they're saying. I can tell they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So I was on her Twitter page today, and there was a post from somebody else that dealt with Evanston reparations, correcting misinformation about local and federal reparations. Both are possible. Correcting Evanston reparations, correcting misinformation about local and federal reparations, both are possible. So we'll talk about that. But it looks like in Evanston is a city of 75,000 people. Evanston is a city of 75,000 people, 16% African American. It looks like redlining was more devastating in Evanston than slavery. And I'm still trying to find the evidence of slavery existing in Evanston, Illinois. This is a city council trying to repair damage that was done by city government. Federal government is going to be separate. That's different. That's HR 40 and whatever other bill they can come up with and get passed. But as I've said before, and people don't want to come to the realization, they don't want to smell what the rock is cooking. I'm all for HR 40, but they've been trying to get HR 40 passed for 33 years. They still don't have enough votes to get HR 40 passed in the House of Representatives. HR 40 was first introduced in 1999 by Representative John Conyers here from Detroit. I was a senior in high school in 1989. I'll be 50 June of this year. And they still don't have enough votes to get HR 40 passed in the House of Representatives. This bill, spearheaded by Alderwoman Robin Ruth Simmons, they got this passed in 2 years. 33, 2 years. And then once you get HR 40 passed, which I'm all for it because I understand the process. HR 40 is not a bill to distribute reparations. It's needed because America needs a massive history lesson, and many Americans are ignorant of history. You need a congressional study done to understand the impact of slavery and the legacy of slavery: Jim Crow segregation, redlining, discrimination against African American farmers, which is why $5 billion was in the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, because that was a bill from Senator Cory Booker and Reverend Raphael Warnock. They were able to put that in the bill and get that passed for African American farmers who've lost 92% of their land, of almost 12 million acres of land over the past 100 years. That largely deals with discrimination coming from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the federal government, like the Farmers Home Administration, things like this, found in 1930, that discriminated against African American farmers when it came to getting loans for mortgages on their farms. And then you look at between 1930 and 1939, during the Great Depression, we lost over 200,000 farms just between that period of time because we were discriminated against in getting loans, and white farmers could get loans from the federal government, low interest loans, to pay their mortgages, save their farms, mechanize their farms, and better compete against African American farmers. Okay? Now you have some people like Chaz here who don't know what the hell he's talking about, who says, oh, the hell with HR 40. We need as many of our people to declare our self-determination. You think you're the first one that came up with self-determination? You ever studied Nation of Islam? Marcus Garvey? UNIA? Black Panther Party for Self-Defense? Come on. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth upon resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Malcolm X was for self-determination, but Malcolm X understood the power of government and law. Go read the speech. We talked about this on our Friday show, because people talk about Malcolm, but a lot of people don't read Malcolm's speeches. Go read the speech Malcolm gave June 28, 1964, when he announced the organization, when he announced the formation of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. It's at blackpast.org. Go read that speech. He lays out an economic program for the Organization of Afro-American Unity, a political program that includes voter registration and voting strategically. He lays out an education program. He lays out, I think it's about a 5-point program he lays out. Malcolm was all for self-determination, but he understood laws and policies. He understood the power of government. So a lot of people come up with this nonsense, but don't understand like reality. All that stuff sounds good in theory. Dr. King was for self-determination, but he understood the power of government. Go watch the interview from March in 1967 called Beyond Civil Rights, Black Power. So it's about a 27-minute interview that NBC News did with Dr. King. And he's talking about how after the Civil War, white peasants coming to this country were given an economic floor by the federal government, and how African Americans were locked out economically, and how there were massive land giveaways, like the Homestead Act of 1862, the Southern Homestead Act of 1866. The Homestead Act of 1862 redistributed about 245 million acres of land. And African Americans were almost exclusively locked out of that. Go study the Homestead Act of 1862. They gave away land up until 1988 from the Homestead Act of 1862. They gave away land up until 1988, the last allotment of land, because of the Homestead Act of 1862, which started during the Civil War. The last allotment of land was 80 acres of land in Alaska. So we don't understand how all these pieces come together. We think we invented something when we talk about self-determination. Okay, so we're going to deal with that. We'll talk about Evanston, Illinois, give you an update of what's going on in that, and correct misinformation floating around on social media, because people rather talk than do research. Then this past Tuesday, I wasn't on the air live, at least here, because I was interviewed on the Tammy Mack Late Show on Fox Soul TV, the streaming service for Fox Soul TV. That was Tuesday, February 23rd. I was on that show, and we dealt with the boom in biracial advertising. The boom in biracial advertising. The topic I talked about back in June 2018 after the royal wedding, Meghan Markle marrying into a family of colonizers with Prince Harry. I call them colonizers not because they're white, but because Great Britain colonized 1/5 of the world population. If you go back like 100 years before that. So we'll share an excerpt of that as well. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. All right, we'll go to the phone lines just a minute. The white farmers in Arkansas. Oh, yeah. So you know about the Lane, Arkansas, the Lane race riot of 1919, and no white people were held. You had over 200 people killed. Over 200 people killed, and now one white person was charged or convicted in those killings of African Americans. All right, stand by. Stand by, everybody. You think dude, a lot of people have filed status. Go study the Washita Moors. Come on, this is not something new. I know Washita Moors. No, I'm not calling them colonizers because they're Europeans. I'm calling them colonizers specifically because Great Britain colonized 1/5 of the world population. You go back to 1918, 100 years prior to the royal wedding. You go back to 1918, 1/5 of the world population lived under British rule. All right, stand by. All right, we'll be back from break in 2 minutes here. All right, back from break in 1 minute. Okay, so they ain't played a disclaimer before my show this time. Maybe they'll play it next break. All right, welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, March 28th, 2021. We're live. We're here on Sundays. We're here for 2 hours, okay? Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. We're here for 1 hour, but we always go over on our social media platforms. But Sunday nights, we're here for 2 hours, scheduled on 910 AM. All right. So right before the break, we'll give you a rundown of what we're going to talk about on today's show. Now, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. Been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. We're going to have to do a special segment with Kenya K. Stevens talking about relationships and sex very, very soon. Okay. I'm serious. Very, very soon. All right. Because this is ridiculous what's going on out here. I think Kenya's back in the country. I think she was out of the country, and I think she's back. So we're going to bring Kenya on very soon. We probably had to do a separate, we can't bring Kenya on 910 because Kenya going to violate our FCC license. I'm just saying. But that's another conversation. But look out for that. We'll announce it before it happens, okay? Yeah, she may not do it purposely, but I know she's gonna say something that we're not supposed to say on FCC regulated radio. All right. So we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. Text the word KEMET, KEMET, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word KEMET, KEMET, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. It helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, and we're here 6 days a week. So that helps us to finance the show and pay a little few of the bills, etc. Also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can still register for the online course that I teach on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history, and we'll lead up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So we'll post a link here for more information, and also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, for more information as well. And all the sessions, we do the sessions live, but all the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch them over and over again. You can watch from around the world. Okay, so a lot of people have been following what's going on in Georgia. Now, you know, we've been dealing with this for the past few weeks here on this show, and dealing with the bills going through the House of Representatives in Georgia. But keep in mind also there are 43 state legislatures that are trying to pass at least 250 bills that deal with these draconian laws. All right. And all this is the fallout from the 2020 presidential election, where Republicans lost the Senate, and they still lost the House, and they lost the White House. Okay. So this is revenge. This is the white backlash that always comes after periods of advancement that African Americans make. So more and more calls are taking place for economic boycotts in Georgia. Okay, we have heard Latasha Brown as well as Cliff Albright from Black Voters Matter talk about putting pressure on corporations in Georgia, Georgia-based corporations like Coca-Cola and UPS, Delta Airlines, etc. And that is those initiatives are heating up also. Okay, so I want to go to, we're going to pull up this article here. If we look at this article from NBC News, calls for economic boycott grow after Georgia adopts voter restrictions. Calls for economic boycott grow after Georgia adopts voter restrictions. Okay, and we're going to go to clip one here in just a second, Jalen. So if we look at this article from March 26, okay, March 26, 2021 from NBC News. Latasha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, said, "I think all things should be considered on the table. I think all things should be considered on the table." One of the big targets is Coca-Cola. If you remember Dr. King's last speech, I've been to the mountaintop, April 3rd, 1968. Coca-Cola was one of the companies Dr. King told the people in Memphis, Tennessee to boycott, okay, because of their discriminatory hiring practices. He said Coca-Cola, Hart's Bread, Wonder Bread, and Sealed Test Milk. And then we know about 1981, Reverend Jesse Jackson and Rainbow Push led a nationwide boycott against Coca-Cola. We need to go study that economic boycott because it worked. We need to go study that nationwide economic boycott because it worked. Now, following Georgia's approval of new voter restrictions on Thursday, a number of voices are considering a boycott of state businesses of the state of Georgia. The Republican spearheaded legislation, which imposes an ID requirement for mail-in voters, has been criticized by President Joe Biden as a blatant attack on the Constitution and good conscience. One of the loudest voices for economic boycotts belongs to Bishop Reginald Jackson, okay, of the AME Church's 6th Episcopal District, who told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that he's calling for a boycott of Coca-Cola products until the company declares strong opposition to the new law. Now, just contrast this. I talked about this on Roland Show Friday. We've talked about this here a number of times before. Back in 2015 to 2016, okay, and we'll go to the phone lines in just a minute. Back in 2015 and 2016, when you had the Indiana transgender bathroom bill in 2015, and then the North Carolina transgender bathroom bill in 2016, corporations were tripping over each other to come out and put out statements denouncing the transgender bathroom bills. They were threatening to cancel conferences. They were threatening to stop projects that were taking place in the state of Indiana and North Carolina. Okay. We have seen and heard relative silence from most of these corporations. They put out some lukewarm statements. One, the NCAA is talking about maybe cancel. I think is one of the. I think it was NCAA talking about maybe canceling. No, it was. I think it was Major League Baseball talking about the All-Star game, maybe not having it in Georgia. But compare this, what's going on with voter restriction laws in Georgia. Compare that to Indiana transgender bathroom bill, and the difference in corporations coming out in force, threatening economic withdrawal from the state of Indiana. This is a stark difference. This is why I said, wait a second. If you come out, if you stand up for LGBT, then you can't be silent on BLACK. If you come out in force for LGBT, then you need to come out in force for BLACK. Because some of these same corporations, they donated money during the protest for George Floyd and all that back during summer 2020. And they put out statements denouncing the killing of George Floyd. They supported Black Lives Matter and all this. Well, black voters matter also. You can't have laryngitis now and yell on the microphone when everybody was at home because of COVID watching the protests in the streets. You can't have laryngitis now. So Bishop Reginald Jackson was on American Voices on MSNBC talking about calling for this economic boycott of Georgia-based corporations. Okay, let's go to this clip, Jalen.
Good to have you with us. You heard right there the senator talking about the moment that we find ourselves in. How do you see this moment?
Well, I think we find ourselves in a moment where our democracy is at risk. We find ourselves in a moment where this is not just a matter of suppressing black votes. This is a matter of blatant racism and trying to turn back time to the era of Jim Crow. And it is a challenge that must not go unanswered. And I am determined, and I believe blacks across the country are committed that we will respond.
Advocates in the state have, of course, been putting pressure on businesses to denounce voter restriction efforts. You've been calling for a boycott of Atlanta-based Coca-Cola. What is it that you want to see from corporations?
Well, you know, last June, for example, the president of Coca-Cola made a statement. He said, companies like ours must speak out in support of Black Lives Matter and social justice issues. Our companies can do better. And we believe he was correct. Our concern is with them attempting to suppress black votes and with racism, Coca-Cola has been quiet. Delta has been quiet. Home Depot has been quiet. And we must not sit back and allow these corporations to remain silent in the face of what's going on. This week, we're trying to arrange a meeting with corporate executives across the country to speak to them about their responsibility to speak out on these issues. And if they do not respond, then we will be calling for a boycott of some of these companies. We cannot give them millions and millions and millions of black people and brown people's dollars, and yet they remain quiet in the face of this assault on our voting rights and our democracy.
I want to talk to you about how quickly this legislation was passed, Bishop. The elections bill passed and signed into law in a matter of hours. What does it tell you that Georgia Republicans were in such a rush to get this one on the books so quickly?
Well, Lisa, I'll tell you what's interesting. On last Thursday, the House of Representatives was supposed to act on Senate Bill 202, and the Senate was supposed to act on it on Monday. We had a rally at the State House on Thursday. I went over and 5 of my colleagues, we had a meeting with the Lieutenant Governor and we told him where we stood on this issue and tried to persuade him on this issue. Then we were trying to get a meeting scheduled with the governor. And next thing we knew, the governor's response came back, something came up and he was not available. Well, now the country knows what came up. That is that less than an hour after the Senate passed this bill, the governor decided to sign it. And the folly of this is, on every other time when a major piece of legislation is passed, the governor's office said it would take a couple of days because the governor's council needed to review it. It did not take them any time at all to review this, which means that his mind had already been made up.
Bishop Jackson, can't tell you how much I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, so that was from American Voices on MSNBC. That was Bishop Reginald Jackson of the 6th Episcopal District of the AME Church. He spoke with Alicia Mendez on American Voices, March 27th, 2021. Check out that clip at msnbc.com. He's calling for a boycott of Georgia-based businesses, specifically Georgia-based corporations, okay, for not opposing the state's new election law. Now, we know Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright and other people have been calling for this. NSA UFA, the New Georgia Project, etc. I want to go back to this article from NBC News quickly, and we'll go back, then we'll go to the phone lines. So one of the loudest voices belongs to Bishop Reginald Jackson. He's absolutely correct. He's calling for a boycott of Coca-Cola products until the company declares strong opposition to the new law. Now, if they actually do this economic boycott, right, that means that means if you go to McDonald's, don't order Coke. And it was somewhere in one of these articles I was reading, because I read so much on this. They listed all these products from Coca-Cola. Okay, it ain't just Coke; it's the subsidiaries as well. All right. So I encourage people to go to YouTube and search for "I've Been to the Mountaintop." Listen to the full 43 minutes of Dr. King's last speech. Dr. King said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. We have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal, which means it's not just marching and protesting. You have to have targeted, sustained economic withdrawal. You have to choose your targets, and you leverage your economics to enforce your politics. You redistribute the pain through targeted, sustained economic withdrawal to be able to push your issues. This is what he was talking about. And he said that the people in Memphis needed to boycott Coca-Cola, Wonder Bread, Hart's Bread, and Seal Test Milk because of the discriminatory hiring practices there in Memphis, Tennessee. If we go back to this article quickly, now this ties into the Nashville, Tennessee economic boycott of 1960, the Easter boycott of 1960 in the downtown business district, which I'll talk about in just a minute briefly after we take this phone call. Now, the Atlanta-based company said in a statement that it's been in favor of greater accessibility for voters. This is Coca-Cola, because the heat is being turned up on them. You got, and see, one of the things, I'm trying to find the interview that NSA UFA did today. And it was on MSNBC. I forgot whose show it was on. But one of the things she's talked about is that some of these same corporations made contributions to many Republicans in the Georgia state legislature who wrote this bill and signed this bill that was just signed into law by Governor Brian Kemp. So she's saying, well, wait a second, you can't like stay on the sidelines. You help finance this. So this is understanding, leveraging our economics to enforce our politics, and understanding that we have to stop financing our own dehumanization also. So we go back and look at this article. Now, the Atlanta-based company, Coca-Cola, said in a statement that it's been in favor of greater accessibility for voters. Quote, throughout the legislative session, we have been active with the Metro Atlanta Chamber in expressing our concerns and advocating for positive change in voting legislation. We, along with our business coalition partners, sought improvements that would enhance accessibility, maximize voter participation, maintain election integrity, and serve all Georgians. Okay, that's lukewarm. You're not denouncing voter suppression. You're not denouncing these Jim Crow tactics. Others, that's end quote, okay? That's the statement from Coca-Cola. Others are targeting the state's burgeoning film industry. Director James Mangold, who directed Girl Interrupted and Logan, tweeted Friday, I will not direct a film in Georgia. All right, we appreciate that, James Mangold. Now, and we want you to talk to some of your other director friends, especially the white ones, and have them come out in opposition also. Latasha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, has started a campaign to pressure Georgia-based businesses to oppose the voter restrictions. Asked by MSNBC host Joy Reid Friday if a boycott was in order, Latasha Brown said, I think all things should be considered on the table. Voting rights platform Democracy Docket said in a statement Friday that Aflac, Delta Airlines, Home Depot, and UPS are among the companies being pressured to speak out against the law. Aflac said in a statement last week that it would only support solutions that make voting easy and accessible for every eligible voter while maintaining the security and transparency of the voting process. What the hell does that mean? Now, this was before Governor Brian Kemp signed the bill into law. Now, what's Aflac saying now? Are they going to send a duck out there to speak to us? What's Aflac saying now? Delta Airlines said Friday it believes that full and equal access to voting is a fundamental right for all citizens. That's good, but you should tell that to the Republicans in the Georgia state legislature that passed this bill. That's good, but tell this to the Republicans in the Georgia state legislature that passed this bill. Tell this to Brian Kemp. Home Depot and UPS did not respond immediately to requests for comment. Now, this article is from March 26, NBC News. It still hasn't been updated. Well, I want to hear from Home Depot and UPS. Because does Home Depot want us to stop coming to them to buy home repair products and home improvement products? Does UPS want us to stop using UPS? You know, what can Brown do? I tell you what Brown can do. Brown can stand up for black. That's what Brown can do. Let's go to the phone lines, Jalen. Who we have? Let's see. Who we have line one. We've got who is this? Cunningham. Cunningham, line one. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from, Cunningham.
313 Detroit, Michigan, 7 Mile in Woodward right now.
Okay, 7 Mile Woodward, Detroit, Michigan. Go ahead, man. Thanks for holding, man. Thanks for holding. I appreciate it. Go ahead with your question or comment.
So my comment is, in the state of Michigan, they have some Jim Crow laws coming down, and they, the head of the Republicans called our governor a witch, and he just had to apologize. They had to force him, send emails to force him to apologize. All three of them call all of them witches and burn at the stake, or just all type of Trump craziness.
Exactly.
I don't like to say that man's name.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's state Iowa all the way, every single state has stuff going on in regards to this Jim Crow, and so the boycott money rules everything. And I love that idea, because when you sue a person and sue them enough, they make changes.
Right.
So that's not suing them, but when you hit a person in their pockets, that makes changes. And I don't cook. I'm a taxi driver and an activist. I eat fast food all day.
Okay.
This is going to be hard for me as it regards to Coca-Cola. I don't know. Probably have to just drink ice water, with my combos. But I'm gonna do.
You can't drink another cola that's not made by Coke. You can't drink another cola that's not made by Coke. If you want cola.
Does McDonald's carry nothing but Coca-Cola?
Yeah, but you can stop at a gas station or something, can't you?
Yeah, but I done paid my money for the combo.
All right. Well, you may get like some juice or something. Tell them add that to the combo, what have you, and then stop and get a pop or something. I don't know. We have to figure something out for we have to figure something out for people.
I'm gonna be weak, but I'm gonna do it. And just a shout out to those in Detroit.
Yep.
Tomorrow's executive session is Detroit City Council on Zoom. It's very important for you to show up. They're doing budgets for Detroit, the Department of Transportation, which is bad bus service. There's a lot of issues in the city of Detroit. So tune in tomorrow. I'm not affiliated. I'm just an activist.
Okay.
I want people to show up on Zoom, Detroit City Council. There's a 10 a.m. session, and I think there's a 1 o'clock session. It's very important for us to join that Zoom. Thank you for your time.
All right. Just 1 second before you go. Okay. So a 10 a.m. session and a 1 p.m. session. This is for Detroit City Council. Okay. Now just talk for a minute. You said some budget issues. Talk about that for a minute.
So Detroit Department of Transportation, I think it's part of the gentrification plan, because Detroit Department of Transportation sucks. I'm a taxi driver.
Okay.
I've done it for 8 years. Smart Bus is a suburban bus. And the drivers, they increased the budget for security and more police, which is good. But I'm a taxi driver, and the bus service is so bad where people are spending their last when they don't have it, and the buses don't show up, and then they have magazines, national magazines, and they put out, the bus service is great, or the bus service executives will go to city council and tell them that, the bus service is fine, etc. And they're not getting out in the streets for real, and asking the people, the grassroots nobodies like myself, and see, I shouldn't even care. I'm making money off of this bus system being terrible. And so the budget hearing is for tomorrow, and then the police department, they want to give them, don't get me wrong, a $70 million gun range in a recession or the press. They don't need a new gun range. They got one. Remodel the one they have. Now, that's
70 million or 7 million?
It's a lot of money that they need to spend because they got one already that could be remodeled.
Okay.
But all these budgets were last week and the week before, and then what they do is they put it all into executive sessions, the ones they want to make changes to and look into, and their job to balance the budget. If they want to change it, they have to find the money somewhere else.
Right.
And so that's what executive session is, and that is tomorrow, Detroit City Council.
Okay. That's dealing with the Detroit Police Department Improvement Plan. I think that's the 2020 Improvement Plan. Detroit Police Department Improvement Plan. I'm on DetroitMI.gov right now looking at it. Okay. And so
and
go ahead.
The Zoom number is 330-332-554.
330-332-554. Okay. And that's for
so you're looking on the site, you're better off at it than me. So you can find out if there's a budget meeting. I mean, Scott Benson is chairing the meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay. City Councilman Scott Benson.
Session at 1.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilman Scott Benson.
All right, but see what this is. The reason why I want you to explain this to people, because this is an example of how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. This is city taxpayer dollars. This is funding Department of Transportation. This is, now when you talk about the buses, are you talking about DDOT buses or are you talking about smart buses?
Well, smart is its own entity.
Yeah. Okay, DDOT buses. Yeah, right. So
they're appropriating, which I agree, they're appropriating money for more police, which they need because they get rowdy on the bus. And I've gotten rowdy. I ain't gonna lie to you. When I was on the bus, folks took me off, and I got rowdy on the bus. You know, I'm from the east side.
You said you got robbed on the bus? You said, hold on. You said you got. I'm hearing some distortion.
All the time.
You said you got robbed on the bus?
No. So I said I had to get rowdy.
Oh, rowdy. Okay.
People on the bus.
With ignorant people.
They need more police. So they're doing budget increase for the police on the buses. That's good. Their own police force.
Right.
But they need to get the buses on time, clean, bus shelters in the cold.
Yeah.
This is so much more they could be doing. And then they're charging fare again.
Right, they are.
One of the poorest black cities in the nation.
They just started charging.
They shouldn't even be charging fare.
Right.
So I don't know. I digress.
Okay, man. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it. All right, Cunningham. Thanks for giving us that information. Now, see, this is an example of one, how elections have consequences. Two, how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of law, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This deals with the Department of Transportation. Many people in Detroit don't have cars, even though this is Motown, but hell, Barry Gordon moved away a long time ago. But many people don't have cars in the city of Detroit. Car insurance is sky high, so they have to rely on public transportation to be able to get to jobs. Okay? They have to rely on public transportation to be able to get to jobs. Public transportation is controlled by city government. All of this is connected. All right, before the break, so we left off dealing with Home Depot and UPS did not respond immediately to requests for comment. Okay. UPS asked, what can Brown do for you? Brown can stand up for black. That's what Brown can do for you. Okay. That's what Brown can do for us. Brown can stand up for black. All right. So 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay. See, I wanted them to give you this information dealing with city government, because a lot of times people talk about self-reliance, but that's because they don't understand how city government works. Just like right now in the city of Detroit, $2 billion comes out of City Hall each year in government contracts. When I checked a few years ago with the mayor's chief of staff, it was $2 billion. Okay. She did the research for me, and she said only 5% of city of Detroit contracts go to quote unquote minorities. That's their term. That wasn't my term. That was their term, minorities, because she said they didn't have it broken down by race. Minorities includes white women. But wait a second, Detroit is 80% black. How $2 billion in contracts, and that's a reallocation of taxpayer dollars, and only 5% of the contracts go to quote unquote minorities. I estimate probably only 3% African Americans. I used to manage an African American company that had a city of Detroit contract. I understand the process. We had contracts with the city of Detroit, County of Wayne, and the state of Michigan. So I have an understanding of contracts through local governments because I managed companies where we had them. I wrote I helped write proposals to get new contracts, helped write proposals for the renewal of our contracts. I had to go through the certification process to become a certified vendor for the state of Michigan, okay, for us to get a state contract for to provide educational services. All this deals with government. All this deals with government. And we had an African American owned business, and most of our employees were African American. All right, so right before coming up on a break here, let's go back to this article here from NBC News that deals with a growing call for economic boycotts. A growing call for economic boycotts. Calls for economic boycott grow after Georgia adopts voter restrictions. Okay. So then they say on Friday, Joe Biden called the restrictions, which made it illegal to provide food or water to people waiting in line to vote, the quote unquote outrageous return of racist Jim Crow laws. Not everyone thinks the boycott is the answer. Bernice King, CEO of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, said such action could hurt some of the very voters it seeks to help. Quote, please stop the boycott talk, she tweeted Thursday. That would hurt middle-class workers and people grappling with poverty, and it would increase the harm of both racism and classism. Would she say that? All due respect to Reverend Bernice King, would you say that to the people in Memphis, Tennessee? Back in 1968, would you tell them don't boycott Hart's bread and Coca-Cola and Wonder Bread and Siltest milk? When you have economic boycotts of corporations, you look to the other corporations to divert your funds to that support your cause, and then you look for alternative African American owned businesses also as much as possible. So you see, we can't be scared to pull the trigger. See, I'm telling you, I can't stress this enough. When we look, we can't be scared. When you're dealing with Republicans that don't care. Okay, you got to understand the nature of these people that we're dealing with. We have to stick our foot up the proverbial behind of these corporations and let them know we're not playing. Seriously. And it has to be a 50 state. It has to be African Americans in 50 states, not just in Georgia, targeting these corporations. African Americans in 50 states. Your leverage comes not from just people within a state boycotting nationwide companies or international companies. It comes from people in all 50 states targeting a few 5, 6, 7, 8 nationwide international companies. That's where the leverage comes. That's where the leverage comes. So you have to figure out how to reduce the negative impact to people already in poverty. But I guarantee you, if you go ask some of those people about what's coming down the pike and what Republicans are doing, they say, look, we need to engage in these economic boycotts. Because if you don't, it's going to get worse. If you don't, it's going to get worse. See, this ain't about just Georgia. There are 42 other state legislatures trying to do similar things. So we can do. Okay. We're coming up here on the break. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit about the lawsuit that's been filed. And then also, I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. State Representative Renita Cannon, State Representative Renita Cannon, State Representative Renita Shannon talked about State Representative Park Cannon being arrested. Okay. And she gives a further breakdown of what's in this Jim Crow era bill that Governor Brian Kemp signed, and right above his head was a painting of a famous slave plantation in Georgia. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Stand by, everybody. All right, we'll be back from break in 3 minutes. Stand by, everybody. All right, everybody, share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. All right, how's everybody doing? We got Kimberly, we got Ivory, just a few of the people watching here. Let's see here. Let me post this. All right, stand by. We've got who else we have? Anita in Detroit, Becky. Okay, in the city of Flint, current mayor has blocked our black contractors. He's given all contract to white companies. Was that, Becky, was that the mayor that did that, or was that city council? Usually in cities, contracts are approved by city council. Now, in some cities, like in Detroit, I know years ago, if it was a contract that was under $25,000, then the mayor could give out that contract himself. It didn't have to go before city council. But if it was above $25,000 or more, they had to be approved by city council. All right, stand by. We'll be back in, should be 1 minute. All right. All right, Blue Fire Ivory, how you doing? Kimberly.
910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media.
All right, welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, March 28th, 2021. I knew they were going to play the disclaimer. I knew they were going to play it with me on. All right. So right before the break, we were talking about calls are growing for economic boycotts against corporations based in the state of Georgia behind the voter restriction bill that Governor Brian Kemp signed on Thursday, March 25th. Okay. And we've been talking about that here on this show. Now, we know a lawsuit has been filed. Newsweek.com has an article dealing with this. Black Voters Matter Fund, New Georgia Project, and Rise Inc. sue state over voter suppression bill. Okay. And let's see here. I want to, let's try to pull this up quickly here. there was I want to give you a brief overview of some of the things that are in this bill. Okay. I want to do a brief overview of some of the things that are in this bill, because some people may have heard, bits and pieces of it. So the new law signed by Governor Brian Kemp on Thursday, March 25th, does some of the following. It limits the locations of ballot drop boxes to inside election offices and early voting locations. And let me see here. Okay, hold on. Let me pull this up just 1 second. Okay, so it also requires mail-in voters to use a driver's license or other documentation instead of signature verification. It also shortens the window to request absentee ballots. Okay, shortens the window to request absentee ballots. And let's see here. I think we have, okay. Yeah, let me turn on the screen share here. And you can see some of this. This is from NBC Nightly News. Let's look at this. Okay. Limits the locations of ballot drop boxes to inside election offices and early voting locations. It requires mail-in voters to use their driver's license or other documentation instead of signature verification. It also shortens the window to request absentee ballots. It standardizes hours for most early voting from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It standardizes hours for most early voting from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., which can make it more difficult for residents to cast ballots after work. Now, State Representative Renita Shannon is going to talk about this in just a minute in the segment I'm going to share with you from Roland Martin Unfiltered. And I was a panelist on Roland's show on Friday. It also allows state officials to take over over county election boards. This is critical. This is critical because what this does is if the state election board does not like a result in an election, let's pick a city just for the heck of it, say Atlanta, because Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms has to run for re-election in 2022, next year. Atlanta is in Fulton County. So if Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms wins and the state election board doesn't like the election results, they can take over the county board and overturn election results. This is an example of how elections have consequences. Once again, I guarantee you, if Stacey Abrams had become governor of Georgia, when this little idiotic bill came across her desk, she would have vetoed that bill. And it would not be law. And State Representative Park Cannon would not have been arrested and facing 2 felony charges right now. So also, this Jim Crow era bill makes it a crime to give food or drinks to voters waiting in line. Now, Democrats are vehemently opposed to the new law. Stacey Abrams, founder of the voting rights group Fair Fight, called the law blatantly unconstitutional and nothing less than Jim Crow 2.0. Democratic State Rep Park Cannon was arrested after she knocked on Brian Kemp's door as he signed the bill underneath a painting of a slave plantation in Georgia. Mark Elias, an election lawyer who represents voting rights organizations, announced a lawsuit challenging the law, arguing it violates the 14th Amendment of 1868, 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Republican state legislators have seized on Donald Trump's false voter fraud claims of the stolen election. They seized on the big lie to then try to get these bills passed because they said there's widespread voter fraud that doesn't exist, because they're claiming a stolen election, and the election wasn't stolen, you just lost. President Joe Biden on Thursday called the efforts by Republicans sick and un-American. Also interesting, Fox News, one of the biggest purveyors of this stolen election, some of the hosts on Fox News, like Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Lil Tucker. They've been hit with a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit for allegedly pushing false conspiracy theories about Dominion voting system. Dominion is suing Fox News for $1.6 billion. I hope they win. I hope they bankrupt Fox. Tell you the truth. So I want to go to this clip here. State Representative Renita Shannon was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, March 26th, explaining Georgia State Representative Renita Shannon was on Roland Martin Unfiltered Friday, March 26th, explaining what exactly is in this bill and why it's so harmful. Let's go to this clip, Jalen.
Understand again what happened there. They represented State Representative Parker Cannon. She knocked on the door, charged her with 2 felonies as a result. And right now, State Rep Renita Shannon of Decatur. Glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. This goes to show you how the governor utilizes his thug police, knocking on the door. Seriously, that results in an arrest?
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head, because after what we saw on January 6th with Trump supporters storming and desecrating the D.C. Capitol, and these people were treated nicely by police. Some of them were even helped out of the Capitol. Certainly nobody was arrested on the spot. And Representative Cannon, who was just knocking on a door, which, by the way, is a part of our job. What many people don't understand is when bills are being signed, we are invited to watch those bill signings. So what she was doing was a part of her job, and state troopers treated her worse than they treated the folks in D.C. on January 6th.
Has there been any response from the governor's office, any at all?
No, not to my knowledge. The governor has not said a word, but again, I mean, this is par for the course in the Capitol. We have seen where Republicans have used state troopers to basically put their hands on Black women legislators whenever they get the chance. If you remember, in 2018, Senator Nikema Williams was arrested just for standing with her constituents who were asking after the election where Stacey Abrams ran for governor. Constituents were in the Capitol saying count every vote, because they want to make sure that every vote was counted in that election. And she was arrested. So there's no shortage of state troopers being used to put their hands on Black women legislators.
Is the response? Has the governor said anything about how his troopers conducted themselves?
I have not seen anything, but when you think about the fact that they are always used in a very political way, I don't expect the governor to say anything, because I'm sure he thinks that they were correct in what they did.
This, of course, this is turning obviously a massive fight now. You now have some people calling for boycotts. National Black Justice Coalition, they actually called for PGA Tour players not to play in the Masters. Yesterday, Black Voters Matter, they were actually protesting outside at the airport there, trying to get Delta to stand up. And then there are others who are saying, no, first of all, folks, chill with the economic boycott. We're not there yet. Your response to the economic boycott of Georgia because of this passage?
Well, I understand why people are calling for economic boycott, because at the end of the day, these corporations headquartered right here in Georgia cannot basically wrap their arms around Black Georgians during Black History Month and talk about our culture and promote our culture. But when our rights are under attack, they have nothing to say. And what we have been asking them to do is nothing. It's not like they've not done it before. When we have had other bills come through the legislature that would be bad for business, their voices have been really, really loud. So why do we have to drag them to stand up over voting rights? At the end of the day, we are a significant part of their revenue. And so if they can't stand up for us, then why would we stand up economically for them?
I was looking at a tweet from Eric Erickson, conservative Eric Erickson, who said, hey, you know what? This bill really doesn't do that much. Why folks making a big deal out of this? And I said, well, if that's the case, why the hell do it?
Well, and also, I don't think that he's in any position to talk, considering that this bill is targeted at Black and brown voters. So Eric would not know what this bill actually does, because none of it will likely have an effect on him. Case in point, the bill makes it so voting hours are now 9 to 5. Most people are at work between 9 to 5, in addition to the fact that we know that Black people are disproportionately represented in the number of low-income workers in this country and those without flexible schedule, which is why we were hit so hard by the COVID pandemic, because we didn't have jobs that we could just easily work from home and that were flexible. And so
hold tight 1 second. So for everybody who's listening, so voting hours, early voting hours are only 9 to 5. What were they were before?
All voting hours 9 to 5, unless you make an exception. Voting hours before this bill passed were generally 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We would always tell voters across the state, if you get in line by 7 p.m., you are able to vote.
So wait a minute, are you saying on election? Wait a minute, hold up. So even on election day, voting ends at 5 p.m.
That is correct. The standard voting hours, you start at the baseline of 9 to 5 in this bill. Yes, those are the voting hours, and you have to jump through hurdles in order to make an exception to be able to vote outside of those times. Absolutely. The other thing it does is it restricts when you can drop off your absentee ballot. So this is also very restrictive. The bill says that you can't drop off your absentee ballot unless voting is during the early voting period, unless voting is going on, which means you can't drop off your absentee ballot except between the hours of 9 to 5.
Wait. So if I have an absentee ballot and I'm trying to drop it off before I go to work, I can't do it until 9 o'clock because
that is correct.
Because they're moving this BS about security. They're moving the drop boxes inside, correct?
That is correct.
So whereas now, the way it is, the drop boxes are out there at any time. You could just, 9 o'clock at night, you could drop your ballot off. They're only allowing you to drop off an absentee ballot during the same hours. Well, why the hell am I going to sit and do that? Might as well go in and vote.
Absolutely. And it's even worse than that. So you're correct. You can't even drop your absentee ballot off on your way home from work. The other thing that it makes a crime is to drop off somebody else's absentee ballot. So think about this. If you have an elderly parent who has decided to vote using absentee, because a lot of times it's hard for seniors to make their way out to the polls or really anywhere. So frequently they will use their adult children to, handle many of the things that just make it easier for them. So if you want to drop off your elderly parent's absentee ballot, that is a crime. This bill makes it a crime to drop off somebody else's absentee ballot.
Wait. So you're okay. If a folks are listening, that if I lived in Georgia and my mom or dad voted absentee, they physically have to carry their ballot and drop it off in the ballot box. I can't get their ballot that's signed and sealed and drop it off.
That is correct. They would have the choice of either dropping it off themselves in the drop box or mailing it in. And we all know that USPS is not running in the ways that it used to run. So it's very risky to put anything in the mail nowadays and expect it to be on time delivered wherever you want it to go. That's correct. That's now a crime. Mm-hmm.
And when you say a crime, explain that.
In the bill, it's listed as a crime. And there are quite a few areas where it's a felony crime. Some of these things, for example, watching people vote is now a crime. There are several things in the bill that are a crime now. Some of them misdemeanor, some of them felonies.
So if I drop it off, then you drop it off. So therefore, we can prosecute you for dropping off your parents' absentee ballot.
Absolutely, because it is not your absentee ballot. Yes.
What else? Because see, I love all these conservatives, especially these black conservatives, who keep saying, "Hey, what's the big deal with a voter ID?" This bill is not about voter ID. This bill was a 2-page bill that then blew up to a 100-page bill. Correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There are many things in this bill that are really just meant to target black and brown voters and to just make it harder to vote for anybody. This bill even goes after the judges. It says in the bill, you know how sometimes a poll might not open on time because maybe they're having an issue with the machine? This bill now says that judges have to use clear and convincing evidence to even be able to extend poll hours. So it's even going after the discretion of judges. We have had no problem
with judges using their discretion to say that a polling location may need to be open later because of logistical issues that may have happened earlier in the day. This bill now even makes judges have to jump through more hurdles to show the exact reason why they would allow a poll to stay open later. It reduces early voting times. I mean, there are so many things in this bill, in addition to what you're hearing on national media, which is making it a crime to give folks water and snacks near the polling location. Mm-hmm.
So, and again, I go back to Eric's tweet. This really doesn't do much when we talk about, but what it also does, which is quite nefarious. The state legislatures can essentially overturn a county elections board, and Republicans also are always about local control. This bill also restricts county election boards from making their own decisions about voting in their own counties, correct?
Absolutely. There's a state takeover mechanism, and in addition to that, we have seen countless bills get passed this session, which hadn't even been covered by media, but we've seen countless bills to gut current Board of Elections in counties where have a history of racial discrimination against Black voters. We are seeing boards be gutted to say, listen, if you're on the Board of Elections today, that whole board is being wiped clean, and new people will be seated based on political appointments for these boards. So they're doing a lot of things to make sure that at the end of the day, when Trump was looking for those 11,000, 12,000 votes, he tried to pressure the Secretary of State to find him. This bill will give many avenues the next time the Secretary of State gets pressured by someone to overturn an election.
And I heard one of these white Republicans actually say, we're in charge of the election. We get to determine how everything goes.
I didn't hear that comment, but it would not surprise me. As I've said before, what you are seeing happen across the country is that Republicans elected a committed white supremacist to the president of the United States. And when Trump failed to win re-election, they, since that point, have made it their business to go and try to invalidate all of the votes of Black and brown voters because they largely turned out and powered the win that we have with Joe Biden and the U.S. Senate seat. They are making it their business to target Black and brown voters. That's just what it is. All
right. State Representative Renita Shannon, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
All right. Pause.
Anytime. Thank you.
Pause right there, Jalen. Okay, we're coming up on a break here. On the other side of the break, I was on the panel and we discussed the interview that Roland did. On the other side of the break, I'll share with you what I said Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Also, we're going to squeeze in a segment from the Tammy Mack Live show, March 26th, Tuesday, March 23rd. We weren't live here on the African History Network show on 9:10 a.m. WFDF. I was on the Tammy Mack Live show. We discussed the boom in biracial advertising. And this ties into a broadcast I did back in June of 2018 that dealt with that and how an increase in biracial advertising could be an attack on African-American men. So we'll share a segment of that show with you also. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. We'll be back from break in 4 minutes. All right, stand by. How's everybody doing? We've got Silver Star Ivory, Kimberly, I think absentee ballots can still be mailed in, but they're restricting who can vote by absentee ballot. They had the law of no excuse absentee voting. Now they're restricting who can vote by absentee because so many African Americans, we learned the law and used it and won. Now they're cutting down on that. Okay. Dealing with Malcolm X in the speech from June 28th, 1964. That's at blackpast.org, P-A-S-T, blackpast.org. We talked about this on Friday's show also. His speech from June 28th, 1964. Stand by. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on the 10 a.m. Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, March 28th, 2021. If you like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN show, paypal.me /the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That helps us keep broadcasting 6 days a week, pay some of the bills, finance the show, etc. Keep doing the research. And if you donate through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN show, SHOW, $ the AHN show, SHOW. Okay, so right before the break, we shared a segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered. He interviewed Georgia State Representative Renita Shannon, Renita Shannon, about what's in the new voter restriction bill that Governor Brian Kemp signed into law on Thursday, March 25th. And there was only white men in the room. State Representative Park Cannon was outside knocking on the door. She got arrested. She's charged with 2 felonies. And right above Brian Kemp's head was a statue of was a painting of a plantation in Georgia, a famous plantation in Georgia. There's an article from news1.com that talks about this. We're going to go to clip 3 here in just a second, Jalen. There's an article from news1.com that talks about this. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, Georgia is a former Confederate state. They have one of the biggest Confederate monuments in the country called Stone Mountain. That has on the side of Stone Mountain, you have the carvings. It's a huge mountain. I've climbed to the top of Stone Mountain. I've seen it. On the side of Stone Mountain are the carvings of General Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy. Jefferson Davis was from Mississippi. Mississippi was the state that had the most number of lynchings in the country. I think it was something like 581 lynchings from 1882 to 1968. NAACP's national website, NAACP.org, has a section dealing with the history of lynchings. And they break this history down. And Texas had the second largest number of lynchings in the country from 1882 to 1968. So you have Jefferson Davis and General Robert E. Lee and Thomas Stonewall Jackson. They're carved on the side of Stone Mountain. It's a huge mountain. It's the largest, basically the largest Confederate monument in the country. That's in Georgia. Okay. So if we look at it briefly here at this article, then we can go to this next clip. Georgia voter suppression bill signed into law while slave plantation painting hangs in background. Imagine that. See, you can't make this stuff up. This is, the optics are damning and came amid widespread efforts to remove symbols of white supremacy from government property. Now, this is by Bruce C.T. Wright, March 26, 2021 for news1.com. And they show this. They show the painting here. So you see the pictures of the 7 white men, the 7 dwarfs, right? That's what we should call them. The 7 white supremacist dwarfs. Can we call them that? Okay. The 7 dwarfs. Okay. And you have, let me see, can we up this down, close that. All right. So we see the picture here of the 7 dwarfs. I'm not sure which one Dopey and Sleepy and Grumpy are, but right behind them is this painting of a plantation. So it says, adding insult to injury, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp appeared to metaphorically thumb his nose at his black critics in particular by signing the state's voter suppression bill into law while seated in front of a painting of a backbreaking plantation that thrived from slave labor. Brian Kemp signed the bill Thursday evening amid national outcry at the restrictions that the new law would disproportionately place on black and brown people, who are now expected to have a much harder time voting than in past elections. The Georgia State Patrol even forcibly arrested Democratic State Representative Park Cannon, a black woman, for demanding transparency by knocking on Kemp's closed office door while he was signing the bill. So this information comes from Willie Bunch on Twitter. Willie Bunch, a national opinion writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, posted a Twitter thread on Friday, bringing attention to the plantation painting hanging on Governor Brian Kemp's office wall that was so prominently displayed while the governor signed the bill. Okay. So he points out the painting behind him, and then there's a link. There's a link in the tweet and also in the article that takes you to another page that shows you different artwork from Georgia, and it shows that painting. On the plantation ground, let's see. According to Washington Wilkes Historical Foundation, the Callaway Plantation. This is so the name of the painting is called the Brick House. The Brick House. Now this ain't the Commodore's Brick House, okay? Because I know it's somebody from the 70s or something saying, wait a second, the Commodores were hanging behind Brian Kemp. No, this is not that brick house. Okay, this is a different brick house. All right. I like the song by the Commodores, She's a Brick House, but this is not what we're talking about right now. Okay. So according to the Washington Wilkes, WILKES Historical Foundation, the Callaway Plantation remains home to the brick house in which the Callaway family lived from 1869 to 1910, the period when the plantation thrived. Okay. Now, this is 1869 is after the Civil War ended. But anyway, also on the plantation grounds was the Dally, D-A-L-L-Y, the Dally slave cabin quarters that were built in 1840. Now, they still had slavery in Georgia in 1840. That is conspicuously the only reference to slavery on the website. The promotional site glossed over the fact that by the time of the Civil War, the Callaway Plantation only thrived because of the back-breaking labor of more than 100 slaves who were held in cruel human bondage. Okay, Bunch accurately points out in his Twitter thread. All right, so read the rest of this. Read the rest of this article here. So you got the 7 dwarfs signing the law in front of a painting of a slave plantation. All right. Can't make this stuff up. And Georgia is the state that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in. Atlanta, Georgia. Georgia's voter suppression bill signed into law while slave plantation hangs in background. Okay. So let me we're going to go to this clip in just a second here, but let me just connect the dots for you on this one. Georgia is where Dr. King was born. 1. 2, this month is the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965, in Selma, Alabama, where 600 protesters were beaten and tear gassed by Alabama state troopers because they were marching and they're fighting for a Voting Rights Act, 1965. This is the 56th anniversary of that, March 7th. And then March 21st, as we talked about on last Sunday's show, March 21st was the 56th anniversary of the beginning of the Selma to Montgomery March. That was March 21st. So all this is taking place during the month commemorating that. And you have this Jim Crow era law being signed in the law by a governor that stole the previous gubernatorial election from an African-American woman. If the votes of African-Americans did not matter, why do white Republicans, in general white Republicans, sometimes African-American Republicans, why they work so hard to suppress our vote and keep us from voting if our vote does not matter? Now, I want to go to this next clip here. So after Roland did his interview with State Representative Renita Shannon, he then goes to his panel. I'm on his panel. Here's what I said. Let's go to clip 3, Jalen.
Michael, we had Reverend William Anthony on yesterday, head of Detroit NAACP. Same thing is happening in Michigan. 39 bills have already been introduced there. Again, Republicans, where they control the state legislature, they want to move forward on this. This is absolutely the agenda of the entire National Republican Party. I don't want to hear a single one of these trifling ass black conservatives who defend this try to say, oh no. I mean, every time Malik Abdul was on here, oh no, you're wrong, Roland. That's not the policy of the Republican Party. Yes, it is. It's on full display right now.
Well, Roland, this is what I've been warning people about going back to the 2016 presidential election, going back to the 2012 presidential election. We saw the backlash of the 2012 presidential election when a record number of African Americans, record percentage of African Americans came out and voted. 66.6% of African Americans registered to vote, came out and voted, re-elected President Barack Obama. The backlash was called Shelby County versus Holder, 2013 U.S. Supreme Court case that gutted the Voting Rights Act, the pre-clearance. Because the pre-clearance was gutted in Shelby County versus Holder, this allowed this to take place in Georgia last night. Because otherwise, they would have had to go to a federal judge to get this approved. But because of Shelby County versus Holder, this allowed this to take place last night. So, see, we don't understand law. In politics, is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and we don't understand how to defend ourselves against these threats. This is the white backlash that always comes after periods of time of advancement of African Americans. If you go back to when Stacey Abrams ran in 2018 in Georgia for governor, you had some black people saying they weren't voting for her because she didn't have a black agenda. But your dumb ass let somebody who has an anti-black agenda become governor, and he signed this law. I guarantee you, if Stacey Abrams had become governor, she would have vetoed the bill. See, we're playing a game of political football and don't know the difference between a first down and a touchdown and wonder why we don't have any points on the board. So this is all-out war. As I said 4 weeks ago on your show, we have to engage in all-out economic guerrilla warfare. I'm totally with Latasha and Cliff Albright, but it's in the courts. Yeah, they're gonna file lawsuits in the courts. You have to do that, but it's not just in the courts to fight. It's in the streets, and it's nationwide economic boycotts on these few corporations. Okay, and I hope you bring up how many of these same corporations spoke out with force and threatened economic withdrawal from the state of Indiana and the state of North Carolina when you had the transgender bathroom bills in 2015 and 2016. But now many of these same corporations, many of them have laryngitis now. I hope we talk about that as well.
Well, and that is the case. I mean, Robert.
All right, pause it right there, Jalen. Pause it right there, Jalen. Okay, so you're going to hear more about this. We'll talk some more about this. All right, now, for the sake of time here, read this article from the Associated Press also. It's Georgia governor signs GOP election bill amid outcry. They also talk about State Rep Park Cannon being arrested. I want to go to the this article here from thegrio.com. So let's see here, State Rep, and then we're going to go to clip 4 in just a second. Jalen from the Readout with Joy Reid. We'll go to that clip in just a minute here. So State Rep Park Cannon has put out a statement, and I want to bring up the article from the Griot here. I thought I had it already pulled up. I have a bunch of tabs open. And let's see, while we do that, while I pull that up, let's go to the phone lines. I think we have Spanky, line 2. Let's welcome to the African History Network show. Spanky, tell us where you're calling from.
Detroit.
From Detroit?
Detroit, that's right.
Okay, you're calling from Detroit. All right, thanks for holding. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah. Okay, Michael and Hotep. So I've been listening for years, and now you're talking my language. You're talking about shutting them down. I listen to Nike forever, but I never hear any solution. I love this. Let's do it. I love this. I don't understand why it has taken so long for that to be a solution to anything. In my opinion, every time they sneeze
for what to be a solution? For what to be a solution?
Directing those dollars, holding back those dollars.
Oh, economic withdrawal strategies. Okay. Well, the reason why is because a lot of national leaders get corporate donations. That's why.
Well, I'm for that. I want to give a shout out to Carla Cunningham. Let's make that happen. And I just hope we're not weak this time. I hope that we don't become sheep. You said something about being scared. Don't be scared. Make it happen all over the U.S. And well, I just kind of want to say, in addition to that, I kind of do that on my little level in the first place. I'm like poor, like Poe. But I don't give these little surrounding gas stations my dollars, no.
Right.
And I just think on that level, let's do it. Let's send the message, get the word out, and make it happen. I wish it wasn't called the boycott. One guy said, boycott or mankind, womankind.
Well, boycott is named after Charles Cunningham Boycott, who was an Irish land agent in 1881. And he tried to raise the amount of rent on his tenant farmers, and they revolted against him. And the action taken against him was associated with his last name, Boycott. So it doesn't have anything to do with gender. It comes from Charles Cunningham Boycott. And there was action taken against him by the tenant farmers. There was action of the mail deliverer. The postman refused to deliver his mail. The action taken against him became synonymous with his last name. Okay, so that's why it's called boycott. We can call it economic withdrawal strategies. I call it economic guerrilla warfare. That's what I call it.
Let's go. I love that. Let's go with that. I did know that boycott didn't have anything to do with it, but I didn't know that the story behind it. And, I like your version. I hate the word boycott because it represents temporary. I just don't know why it has to be temporary. I want to start seeing us turn our dollars in permanently because others do that. They do that permanently.
Right. Well, that's because they largely have their history and culture intact. That's why we've been as a legacy of slavery. Because of slavery, we've been stripped of African history and culture, language, spiritual systems, things like this, and that gives us a cultural paradigm to see reality through that influences our economic empowerment and our political empowerment. So we largely have been taught to see reality through the eyes of Europeans, and in most African Americans, our primary language is the language of the oppressor. So this is why. Okay.
Let me ask you this in closing, my school in Hotep. So with all that knowledge and education and sharing with, and the more that we begin to learn, do you think that it will ever be an end to this? Do you think that as we become more knowledgeable and so-called educated about our true history, do you think that the mindset will change like throughout the culture? If it doesn't, we hit. It's that simple.
Well, I hope the mindset changes. If you saw the Grammys from a couple weeks ago, and you saw Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion perform WAP, and you got people defending this nonsense and don't understand the attack against us. If you see the video from Lil Nas X giving a lap dance to the devil, I've been explaining this to people for years. See, my background's in media. My degree's in business administration with a major in marketing. I understand the programming. We're under attack, and the warfare has intensified because the technology has intensified. Okay, so you have people, for instance, who say, "Oh, well, we had Lil Kim and Foxy Brown." You know, that was before YouTube was invented. That was before people still had analog phones in '96. We didn't have smartphones. You didn't have digital downloads because you were still operating on an analog cell phone system. That was before see, Facebook was created in 2004. YouTube was created in 2005. Twitter was about 2010. Instagram was after that. The technology has advanced, so the warfare against us has advanced, but we don't understand how we're being attacked, so we don't know how to defend against the attack. Okay, so look, I got to run. Keep listening, okay? We got to squeeze in the rest of this into the show. All right.
Okay, great show.
All right. All right. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks for listening. Okay, let's look at this here. I want to look at this statement from State Representative Park Cannon, who was arrested for just trying to do her job. Now, what's interesting is I heard the little statement from the king of voter suppression in Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp. He was asked about State Rep Park Cannon being arrested. The only statement he had was that she kicked a Georgia State trooper while being arrested. Not the fact that she was being arrested for doing her job. As in the clip I played from State Representative Renita Shannon, she said that members of the Georgia State Legislature are routinely present when a governor signs a bill into law, because the bill passes the state legislature. State Rep Park Cannon was doing her job. She's trying to view the signing of the bill. Question I would ask is, why was the only white man in the room when the bill is being signed? The 7 dwarfs were there. Why is the only white man in the room when the bill is being signed? Maybe that's who that bill is for. Maybe that's why. See, this goes back to 1963 and State Representative Denmark Gruber. Okay, well, I'm gonna send you that link here in just a second, Jalen. Let's go. First of all, I want to go to let's go to this statement here from. I want to show you this article from the Griot. So, State Rep Park Cannon has put out a statement here, and she tweeted. So she was arrested. Reverend Raphael Warnock went to go visit her while she was in jail. Georgia Representative Cannon speaks out after arrest. We will not live in fear. I am not the first Georgian to be arrested for fighting for voter suppression. I love to say that I'm the last, but we know that isn't true, State Rep Cannon said. Now, the Griot reported that State Rep Cannon was arrested after knocking on Governor Brian Kemp's door and demanding to see him sign into law Senate Bill 202, SB 202, which enables new restrictions on voting by mail. Governor Kemp drew protests Thursday, March 25th over the bill, which voting rights groups say will disproportionately disenfranchise voters of color. Per the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the law requires a photo ID to vote absentee by mail, limits drop boxes, and changes early voting hours. Now, here's a picture of her also being arrested, being taken away. Okay. Let's see here. I want to go to her comments. Okay. Let's see. She tweeted here March 26, Friday, March 26. Hashtag SB2 restricts many methods of voting. These restrictions serve no purpose other than to keep voters from exercising their constitutional right to vote. Okay, this is, she tweeted this article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That's a statement from her. She said, who and what are they protecting when they work this hard to suppress our vote? See, this is what you have to ask yourself. Now, Raffensperger Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger has said there was no widespread voter fraud. His second in command said the same thing. Okay, he was on MSNBC this weekend. So you have to ask the question, well, what are you trying to protect? They're using the lie pushed by Donald Trump of the stolen election. Okay, stop the steal. They're using the big lie to then push for these voter suppression laws. Okay, so in an additional post, she thanked her pastor, Reverend Raphael Warnock, for his support. State Representative Park Cannon said, and make no mistake, when I say hate, I mean white supremacy, the closed door signing of SB 202 and the senseless murder of AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander Georgians, AAPI Georgians are both products of a white supremacist system, different tactics, same goal, fear and control. Okay, I totally agree with that. She said, we will not live in fear and we will not be controlled. We have a right to our future and a right to our freedom. We will come together and continue fighting white supremacy in all its forms. All right. And then she, it looks like she responded to a tweet from Governor Brian Kemp, who stole an election from a black woman named Stacey Abrams. Governor Brian Kemp, here with the other 6 dwarfs, tweeted. You can follow him on Twitter if you like at GOV Kemp. Gov Kemp, you can follow him on. I think I'll follow him also. Follow State Representative Park Cannon at Cannon 458, Cannon 458. But Governor Kemp said, I was proud to sign SB 202, I'm sure you were, to ensure elections in Georgia are secure, fair, and accessible. I appreciate the hard work of members of the Assembly to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Well, isn't cheating how you got in the office? Let's see. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock said today is a sad day for the state of Georgia. The freshman senator told reporters outside of the jail, he said, what we have witnessed today is a very desperate attempt to lock out and squeeze the people out of their own democracy. Lock out and squeeze the people out of their own democracy. All right. We're going to shift gears here. We'll talk about this some more on Monday's show. I want to go to clip 4. No, not clip 4, 5. We're going to go to clip 5, Jalen. We're going to switch gears here. I want to squeeze this in. So, we've talked about Evanston, Illinois, and we've talked about Evanston, Illinois is a city of 75,000 people. It's only 16% African American. Evanston, Illinois is the first city in the U.S. to pay some type of reparations to African Americans. Now, this is dealing with a history of redlining, and as opposed to slavery. I'm still trying to find evidence that slavery existed in Evanston, Illinois, but they have a deep history of redlining. So on Politics Nation, on MSNBC, Reverend Al Sharpton spoke with Fifth Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons, who spearheaded this initiative. And here is that interview. Let's go to this clip.
Joining me now, Robin Rue Simmons, Alderwoman of Evanston, Illinois. Alderwoman Simmons, I'm glad to have you with us tonight because you introduced the measure of the Evanston City Council. I don't have to tell you that when most Americans hear reparations, they think it to slavery. But while slavery's effects are certainly part of it, what you're doing in Evanston is designed to correct for more modern forms of discrimination, basically the effects of Jim Crow in the North. Do I have that right?
That's absolutely right, Reverend Sharpton.
Now, explain, what does your measure cover and what time period and what are you repairing or seeking to address?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. And you're right. Most people think of a slavery reparation in H.R. 40, but every level of government, institutions and organizations are responsible and accomplices to the anti-Blackness that discriminates against our community. And what we did is we took a local approach to reparations. And our case for reparations is found from 1919 to 1969. It's a very specific time of injury with housing policies. Specific housing zoning and ordinance were passed during that time that restricted the Black community to living in a particular part of the city, the western of the 5th Ward. It's where I was born and raised. It's where I served my city. And that area was also intentionally disinvested, intentionally disenfranchised, stripped away of important community amenities like a school, like a hospital, like an opportunity for merchant districts. And that, of course, has impacted us today. Like most American cities, we have a racial divide. In our case, it includes a $46,000 household income difference between Black and white Evanston, 13 years different in life expectancy, and an achievement gap, an education gap, an information divide. We're not unique in that sense. And we've taken our first tangible step, something that we can measure, definitely in its initial introduction alone is not full repair, but it is our first step towards reparation, as we also support HR 40 as a city.
Now, I know that the main funding source for this program is donations, but also tax revenues from the sale of recreational cannabis, which is legal in your state. Can you tell our audience why that second funding source is so significant as and symbolic given the Black population in your city? I agree with you, by the way.
Absolutely. So it's actually our primary funding source. It's $10 million of recreational cannabis sales tax is funding our reparation program. That is important because we have 71% of our marijuana arrests when we received the report were in the Black community, and we are only 16% of the population, and that is a drastic decline from being in the 20s before. So there's a clear case of over-policing. We know that what those arrest records have done to our families, how it has limited our opportunity for jobs and housing and student loan opportunity, and how that impacts families and how unhealthy families impact neighborhoods and ultimately our community. So we are using that sales tax, the most appropriate use for marijuana sales tax, in our opinion, is for reparations for the Black community. We are grateful that we have a city that has bought in. Our allies and partners in Evanston, including the faith community, businesses, private foundations, and residents have begun to contribute to the fund as well, and it's growing.
Now, last month, former President Barack Obama said that reparations for Black Americans is, quote, justified, but called it a non-starter during his tenure because of white backlash. A month before those comments, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee reintroduced her bill, HR 40, which you mentioned just now, and it's a bill from the late Congressman John Conyers, to establish a federal commission to study reparations. President Biden has been reported as in favor of the idea. No word on whether he'd sign the bill if it's passed. Still, the idea of reparations is having as much of a political moment as it's ever has, and with several cities and states and private groups at least considering the idea. Your thoughts?
Well, he's right. It is time. I can't speak to why it wasn't time before. It was time when Rep. Conyers introduced it, 32 years ago, however long that's been. But the time is now.
Pause it right there for a second, Jalen. Pause it right there for a second, Jalen.
Repair for the Black community. No version of equity. The time
Jalen,
is
pause
now.
it right there for a
and
minute.
We see that localities are beginning to pass their own local reparations.
Pause right there. Just back it up about 20, 30 seconds. It's past time. It was time, 1989, when Representative John Conyers introduced H.R. 40. But what people don't understand is that you didn't have enough votes in the House of Representatives to pass H.R. 40 in 1989. You still don't have enough votes in the House of Representatives in 2021. The article I shared from the Washington Post, Dr. Ron Daniels of NARC said that, who's been fighting for reparations for decades, he says there's about 173, maybe 178 Democrats in the House of Representatives that support it. He said they think they could get it to 190. It takes 218 votes to get any bill passed in the House of Representatives. You're not going to get any Republicans to vote for it. So you still don't have enough votes. So yeah, it's time, but it ain't about is it time or not. It's about how many votes do you have in support of the resolution. That's what it's about. Okay, we're going to continue this. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. I'm going to show you a little bit of the 77-page study that was conducted in 2020 that the resolution that passed the city council is based upon. See, they actually did research, unlike a lot of these simple Simon ass comments people putting out on social media attacking this bill. They want reparations, but they can't tell you how to get it. They've been trying to get HR 40 passed for 33 years, and it hasn't gone anywhere. I'm for it, but I'm realistic. Also, they got this passed through city council in 2 years. Okay, keep watching on Facebook, the African History Network, and Michael M. Hotep YouTube. We'll keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. Right now, it's Chris. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Okay. All right. So if you like this type of information, also you can support the African History Network. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. See, we have to make a clear distinction between what we want and how to realistically actually get it. Unfortunately, a lot of our people don't understand law or history. This is why you have to read the U.S. Constitution. In Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution, which deals with the power of the purse, clearly tells you that Congress controls the ability to tax and spend. So a reparations bill, just like other spending bills, have to pass the House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, and be signed into law by a president. You can't do that by executive order. President does not have that authority to do that by executive order. I've heard people say a president can do an executive order to pay reparations. The president can't do an executive order to pay anything. That is controlled by Congress. No, the president can't do that. Go to archives.gov or loc.gov, Library of Congress, archives.gov, National Archives, and read Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the U.S. Constitution. So a lot of this has to do with us not understanding the process to get what it is we say we want. All right, let's go back to this clip here. This is from Politics Nation, March 27th, 2021.
President Barack Obama said that reparations for Black Americans is, quote, justified, but called it a non-starter during his tenure because of white backlash. A month before those comments, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee reintroduced her bill, H.R. 40, which you mentioned just now, and it's a bill from the late Congressman John Conyers, to establish a federal commission to study reparations. President Biden has been reported as in favor of the idea. No word on whether he'd sign the bill if it's passed. Still, the idea of reparations is having as much of a political moment as it ever has, and with several cities and states and private groups at least considering the idea. Your thoughts?
Well, he's right. It is time. I can't speak to why it wasn't time before. It was time when Rep. Conyers introduced it, 32 years ago, however long that's been. But the time is now. There is no other appropriate legislative tool to advance repair for the Black community. No version of equity. The time is now. And we see that localities are beginning to pass their own local reparation. And we know that there are more co-sponsors for H.R. 40 than ever in history. There is a Senate companion bill, S-40, that Senator Booker has introduced, a fearless leader in Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. The time is now. I believe that this nation, enough of us have the will and the heart to advance
repair and justice for the Black community, that we might enjoy liberty and justice as everyone else in America.
Well, it may be a step on a long road, but it's a road I believe we need to take. Thank you, Robin Ruth Simmons, for being with us.
All right, so we'll post this link here. Excellent interview. I'm trying to get her on the show. I talked to her today. Fifth Ward Alderman Robin Ruth Simmons. Great work that they're doing. And they're making more progress. A lot of people out here talking all this BS too. Now, what they did was, when you go research this, if we look at I think I still have the article up from the Washington Post, and there's also one from NBC News, okay? If we look at the article from Washington Post, we talked about this last week. Evanston, Illinois leads the country. Let's pull this up here. Evanston, Illinois leads the country with first reparations program for Black residents. All right. Now, when you read this article, they talk about a study that was done in 2020. Let's scroll down. Okay, the nation's first government. Right now, the whole world is looking at Evanston. Okay, the Evanston City Council approved the first phase of reparations to acknowledge the harm caused by discriminatory housing policies. They're dealing with redlining practices and inaction going back more than a century. The 8-to-1 vote will initially make $400,000 available in $25,000 home ownership and improvement grants, as well as in mortgage assistance, Black residents, primarily those who can show they are direct descendants of individuals who lived in the city between 1919 and 1969 and suffered from such discrimination. Now, this is part of a $10 million fund. The housing money is part of a larger $10 million package approved for continued reparations initiatives, which will be funded by income from annual cannabis taxes over the next decade. African American residents make up 16% of Evanston's population of 75,000. See, this is an example of how elections have consequences. This sister was elected into office. She represents the Fifth Ward, and she spearheaded this proposal and is able to get it passed. Now, they talk about a study that was done. I want to focus in on that because I'm going to show you the first page of the study. I'm going through now, reading it. Let's see here. All right. Okay, but yeah, it may not be in this article here about the study, but here's a picture of Robin Ruth Simmons also. I think it's in the one from NBC News. Let me flip over to that one. We've got this one up also from NBC. Because what they did was they built their argument based upon facts and evidence. Their argument wasn't based upon feelings and emotions. Their argument was based upon facts and evidence. They did the research. And the study lays out the damage that a history of redlining did to African Americans there in Evanston. And that's how you build your argument, but also you are strengthening your position in case you get challenged in court. Because it may not happen in Evanston, because Evanston is only a town of 75,000 people. But if reparations ever passes the federal government, passes the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, and gets signed into law by president, rest assured, they're going to be legal challenges in the judicial branch of government, in the courts. So you want to make sure your argument is rooted, especially in the U.S. Constitution, because that's the foundation of law in this country. When they take you to court, it's based upon a premise that is unconstitutional. So you want to make sure your argument is rooted in the U.S. Constitution. Okay, to defend against potential legal arguments. All right, Evanston, Illinois becomes first U.S. city to pay reparations to Black residents. All right, now, I think it's in this one here. They talk about the study, and it was a 77-page. It was a 77-page study that was done. That's what all this is based upon. Okay, the 77-page study. It may have been an article from ABC News that had it in there. But anyway, here is. Let's look here quickly, and I'm going to show you this other piece. Let's go to the. Let's go to the study here. All right, so this is Evanston policies and practices directly affecting the African American community, 1900 to 1960 and present. It's a 77-page study. This is what the proposal that passed the city council in Evanston. This is what this is based upon. This is based upon this research to deal with how these laws and policies negatively impacted African Americans in the city of Evanston. Now, I'm still trying to find evidence that slavery even existed in Evanston, because slavery was abolished in Illinois in like about 1818. Evanston is founded sometime in the 1840s. And in the article from ABC News, it talked about how the first African American resident in Evanston moved there in 1855. So I'm still trying to find evidence of slavery existing in Evanston, Illinois, and if it did, to what extent? Because redlining did more damage to African Americans in Evanston than slavery did. So if we scroll down and we look at page, this is page 4, looks like. Historical overview. Illinois historical context, the Black Codes. This is from the book Slavery in the North by Douglas Harper. The new states that entered the Union in the North after the gradual emancipation of Northern slaves were just as concerned as the old ones with maintaining their racial purity, just as concerned as the old ones to maintaining their racial purity. Okay, to do so, they turned to an old practice in the North, the exclusion law. The exclusion law. Slaves could not be brought into the Northwest Territories under the ordinance of 1787. But slaves already there remained in bondage. So that's the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 that the 13th Amendment of 1865 is based upon. The 13th Amendment of 1865, which ended chattel slavery, is based upon the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. This is why when people say, "Oh, the 13th Amendment re-enslaved African Americans and it was a legal loophole," all that. No, it's not. It's not a legal loophole. When it said that involuntary servitude was prohibited unless duly convicted of a crime, they weren't making something up for African Americans. That was the law that already applied to white men. So what they're doing is they're giving the same rights and applying the same laws to newly freed slaves that applied to white people, especially white men. So then in 1866, you have the Civil Rights Act of 1866 that protects African Americans from entering into legal contracts. They're given the same rights to African Americans, mostly former slaves. They're given the same rights to them that white people have. Then you have the 14th Amendment of 1868, which gives citizenship. That's based upon the Civil Rights Act. The foundation of that is the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Then you have the 15th Amendment that guarantees the right to vote for African-American men, not women. But the 13th Amendment is based upon the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. All right, now, hopefully you all can see this. Let me try to blow this up some more. Okay. All right, now, slaves could not be brought into the new Northwest Territories under the Ordinance of 1787, but slaves already there remained in bondage. Once states began to emerge from the old territories, most of them explicitly barred blacks or permitted them only if they could prove their freedom and post bond. Okay. Ohio offered the first example, and those that followed her into the Union followed her lead on race. Both Indiana in 1816 and Illinois in 1818 abolished slavery by their constitutions. Because usually each state has a constitution or a charter or something. It's the bylaws of the state. So Indiana in 1816 and the state of Illinois in 1818 abolished slavery by their constitutions. And both followed the Ohio policy by trying to prevent black immigration by passing laws requiring blacks who moved into the state to produce legal documents verifying that they were free and posting bond to guarantee their good behavior. The bond requirements ranged as high as $1,000, which was prohibitive for a black American in those days. I'm talking about $1,000 in 1818? Most white people didn't have $1,000 in 1818. Anti-immigration legislation was passed in Illinois in 1819, 1829, and 1853. Anti-immigration legislation was passed in Illinois in 1819, 1829, and 1853. In Indiana, such laws were enacted in 1831 and 1852. Michigan Territory passed such a law in 1827. Iowa Territory, so when they say territory, that's before they become actual states in the Union, they're actual territories. Michigan, 1827 territory. Iowa Territory passed one in 1839, and Iowa enacted another one in 1851 after it became a state in the Union. Oregon Territory passed such a law in 1849. The evidence seems to support the theory that these rules were not uniformly enforced, but they were invoked against troublesome black residents. You too uppity, you causing too many problems, you're troublesome. Or they could be used against whole communities when white citizens found the increase in black population had reached an unacceptable level. It's just too many of y'all Negroes around here. We got to do something about this. We have to have Negro removal. It's too many of you people. You know, I wonder if because all black people look alike, I wonder if it looked like it was like a lot more of us than it actually was. It was like 20, they thought it was 2,000 or something. Or it was like 20, they thought it was 200. Now, blacks who violated the law faced punishments that included being advertised and sold at public auctions, okay, in Illinois. But this is after, now this is 1853, but this is after Illinois abolished slavery in their constitution. Illinois abolished slavery in their constitution in 1818. Blacks who violated the law faced punishments that included being advertised and sold at public auction. But this is after the state of Illinois, or the territory of Illinois, abolished slavery in 1818. Like colonization, exclusion ordinances often were advanced by self-professed friends of the black race who saw only tragedy in attempts of the race to share the same land. Robert Dale Owen, speaking in Indiana in 1850, asked if any decent person desired, quote, the continuance among us of a race to whom we are not willing to accord the most common protection against outrage and death. The rhetoric hardly is an exaggeration. During the constitutional debate, in the state that year, the state of Indiana, that year, one speaker had frankly acknowledged it would be better to kill them off at once if there is no other way to get rid of them. Okay? We know how the Puritans did with the Indians, who were indefinitely more magnanimous and less impudent than the colored race. Okay, now they're talking about in Indiana, which is next to Illinois. Indiana is the state that Mike Pence was the governor of. All right. The rhetoric hardly is an exaggeration. During the constitutional debate in the state of Indiana that year, one speaker had frankly acknowledged it would be better to kill them off at once if there is no other way to get rid of them. We know how the Puritans did the Indians, who were infinitely more magnanimous and less impudent than the colored race, end quote. Not content with mere legislation, Illinois, Indiana, and Oregon had anti-immigration provisions built into their constitutions. In Illinois in 1848, in clause-by-clause voting, this clause was approved by voters more than 2-1. Most of the opposition to them came from the northern counties of the state, where blacks were few. There were only a few African Americans there in the northern counties of the state. In Indiana, 1851, it was approved by a larger margin than the Constitution itself. In Oregon, in 1857, the vote for it was 8-1. The Illinois Act stayed on the books until 1865. Now, 1865 is the year the Civil War ends, and the 13th Amendment is adopted December of 1865. Such laws were seldom invoked, but they served blacks as grinding reminders of apartheid intentions and legal subjugation. Such laws were seldom invoked, but they served blacks as grinding reminders of apartheid intentions and the legal subjugation. And they offered white authorities and mobs excuses for harassment and violence against blacks. Now, the black codes dealt with more than just settlement. Oregon forbid blacks to hold real estate, make contracts, or bring lawsuits. Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, and California. Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, and California prohibited African Americans from testifying in cases where a white man was a party. When the Illinois State Constitution was adopted in 1818, it limited the vote to, quote, free white men, end quote, and excluded blacks from the militia. In 1818, when the Illinois Constitution was adopted, it limited the vote to free white men and excluded blacks from the militia. Indiana's anti-immigration rule was challenged in the case of a black man convicted for bringing a black woman into the state to marry her. The state Supreme Court upheld the conviction, noting that, quote, the policy of the state is clearly evolved. The policy of the state is clearly evolved. It is to exclude any further ingress of Negroes and to remove those already among us as speedily as possible. See, this anti-immigration law applied to African Americans. in the state of Indiana. There was no legal segregation in Indiana public schools. None was necessary. The white citizens of the state would keep the schools racially pure more thoroughly than any legal provision could. A court upheld the white-only Indiana public schools in 1850, finding that in the eyes of the state, quote, black children were deemed unfit associates of whites as school companions. Black children were deemed unfit associates of whites as school companions, okay? Now, on closer examination, even the designation of a free state can be questioned in a case like that of Illinois. Illinois, as a territory where slaves were held, had been restricting the freedom of black residents since before it became a state. In December of 1813, Illinois territory prohibited free blacks to immigrate to the territory and decreed all who did must leave within 15 days. In December, then this is before before Illinois becomes a state in the Union. This is before the Illinois Constitution before they abolished slavery in 1818 in their state constitution. In December 1813, Illinois territory prohibited free blacks to immigrate to the territory and decreed all who did must leave within 15 days after notice or receive 39 lashes with a whip. 39 lashes. As a state, Illinois maintained the black codes inherited when it had formed part of Indiana, and thus continued its system of what one historian has described as registered and indentured slavery. Registered and indentured slavery. She permitted non-resident slave owners to hire their slaves to citizens of Illinois for a period of 12 months, yet not give the slave his freedom, and justified her act with the excuse that laborers were wanted to erect mills and open the country, and that salt could not be profitably manufactured by white men. When the state legislature once attempted to alter the black law to strip out the provision that allowed slaves to be imported into the colony, the governor vetoed it. Furthermore, Illinois would not even emancipate the few old slaves who had been in the territory since before 1787. Every person bound to service or indenture in the territory was to continue as such under state government, though children born of such persons were to be emancipated. The boys were to be, well, they're not men, emancipated at age 24, the girls at age 18. Read the rest of this here. This is the 77-page study that the City Council of Illinois used to then pass the proposal to disseminate reparations to African Americans who were the victims of redlining in the city of Evanston, Illinois, between 1919 and 1969. Because unlike slavery, they're still descendants, there's still people who were victims of redlining that are still alive in Evanston and still alive in the country. All the survivors of slavery, the last known survivors of slavery, died in the 1950s. The article from ABC News was a really extensive article. And do we have it here? We'll give you the name of it. Go read that one. We've talked about it in previous shows. But see, this is what they did in Evanston was very, very strategic. They did it based upon facts. They did the research, put together the study, just like there needs to be a congressional study to study study really the history of slavery and the impact that slavery has had on the impact that slavery is still having on African Americans to this day. Slavery and the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, redlining, discrimination when it comes to farmers, African American farmers getting loans, the loss of land, 12 million acres of land that African American farmers have lost. Okay, African American farmers have lost about 92% acres of their land, 92% of their land, about 12 million acres. Okay, so all this is the legacy of slavery. This article here from ABC News, they did a really good job with this one. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. This is from March 1st, 2021. We've talked about this article here on the show before. Up to $25,000 per eligible resident for housing will be distributed this year. This is from ABC News. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. Okay, read the full article because they go break this stuff down. I think it's in this one here. They talk about the study. And they talk about Robin Rue Simmons here, who you heard in the interview with Reverend Al Sharpton. The impetus for the city's reparations resolution, first passed in 2019 and spearheaded by Fifth Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons, is rooted partially in Robin Rue Simmons' experience growing up Black in Evanston. She said, early in my childhood, I was invited to have a play date, she recalled. My white friends never had a play date at my home. Visiting a white friend's neighborhood, she noticed, quote, the streets were wider, the trees were taller, the homes were bigger and brighter. As a young child, I recognized that difference. Now, let me see something here. Here's a picture of her also. Discussion with this. Let me see something here. The proposal will create a commission. Okay, not that one. It's opportunity, but also for the. Okay, so one of these. All right, so this one here, they say they have 100 sponsors of Barbara Lee. I think this is Barbara Lee of Texas. Says they have 173 co-sponsors for HR 40. You need you still don't have 218 votes. You need 218 votes. So what that means is we have to vote more people into the House of Representatives who support reparations and vote Republicans out of the House to get to 218 votes. All right, so read this article here. How the first U.S. city to fund reparations for Black residents is making amends. It's an extensive article, and they have a really good video in there also, an interview. And then this one here we'll talk about on Monday's show. This is a piece that I got. So Robin Rue Simmons, who we were talking back and forth with Twitter today, and somebody else on Twitter posted this link here, and she made reference to this as well. This helps to better explain their position, and she says that they're going to pursue federal reparations also. Okay, but this is what Evanston can do at the city level. Evanston reparations, correcting misinformation about local and federal reparations. Both are possible. Both are possible. Okay. This is by Dresden Heath. Yeah, it was Dresden Heath who posted this on Robin Ruth Simmons' Twitter page. That's where I got this from. Dresden Heath. So check this. This is from NBCI Trust, National Black Cultural Information Trust. Read this also. This is from March 24th, 2021. All right, we'll post this link here. Lastly, because we run out of time, I was on the Tammy Mack show on Fox Soul. Fox Soul is the streaming channel, digital streaming channel for, it's a digital streaming channel that targets African Americans. Okay. And we discussed the boom in biracial advertising. All right, we'll go to that clip here in just a second. I want to remind you that you can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is an 8-week, 16-hour online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history. So when you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and you scroll down, you see information about my radio show. We're on Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. You can click right here to listen to audio podcasts of our shows. I'll be uploading more audio podcasts this week. You can read articles that I've written here. There's a broadcast I did dealing with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion performing WAP at the Grammys, and negative corporate controlled hip hop and how we're under attack and how we need to fight back. The information here about the online course, click here to register here. Takes you to the next page and click right here to enroll. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content. So we do the class live Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's an 8-week, 16-hour online course. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All the sessions are recorded. We do the classes live, but all the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over again. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have video clips, book references, articles, etc. Okay, so it's a ton of information, and we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, and what the Moors took into Europe, the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, into Europe, and this brings Europe out of the Dark Ages. We also deal with the African presence in the Americas going back tens of thousands of years. When you register, you can watch the interview I did with Dr. David Imhotep, spoke to our class a few weeks ago, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Okay. So he shared a lot of good information with us. And then also Sister Nubia Wardford, who's a cultural anthropologist, spoke to us as well. She presented to our class also, and she dealt with the origins of ancient Kush and the African queens of antiquity. All right, so the class is regularly $130, on sale $80. You can watch from around the world, watch as much as you want to. Even after the class ends, you can still watch it. Okay, so you can register for that today, and you'll be ready for class this Tuesday. All right, I want to go to this last clip here, this last segment. So I was on the Tammy Mack Late Show, and you've probably seen a lot of commercials with interracial couples, and you may be asking, well, what's going on with that? All right. Now, I did a broadcast back in June 2018 dealing with this, and I dealt with, is the increase in biracial commercials, is that really progress, or is that a covert attack on African American men? So we talked about this. Dr. Wendy Osefo was sitting in for Tammy Mack. And here's what happened when they came to me. Let me back this up. All right.
Is a reflection of the families and the mixed families that we see nowadays, right? So maybe just a reflection of that. Michael, you brought up an interesting point, and I want to talk about like one of the things that you mentioned, not here, but in your recent works, about the dichotomy that you do see when we look at these commercials, right? You say that 70% of these commercials, yes, you know, they're mixed race, but we see white men with black women. And then you then add a layer to that I think is interesting. And you say, you know, why do you believe that this is actually an attack on African-American men? Is it just that they're casting these white men and then they happen to be with these black women? But you're saying that you think that it's some sort of attack. Can you explain that?
It can definitely be an attack when we understand the system of white supremacy and racism, and understanding racism as a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. So there's an economic component when you look at these commercials. All right. Now, it doesn't mean anytime you have growing groups of populations, you're going to have advertisers tap into those growing groups of populations. They want to increase revenue, increase shareholder prices, etc. Okay, so that's going to happen. But what is interesting, and if you go back to 2013, you look at the Cheerios commercial. In the backlash Cheerios got, it was an interracial couple, African-American man, white woman. They got a lot of backlash, a lot of hate mail. But what happens is with these commercials, usually people are paid for the commercials, okay? If it's a regional commercial, national commercial, oftentimes there are residuals tied to it, or it can be an exclusive commercial where they cannot be in a commercial for a competing brand, so they get paid extra for it. So if you have a large percentage of these commercials with a white man and an African-American woman, or a white man and some other race, but especially an African-American woman, then this locks African-American men out of economic opportunities, or as many economic opportunities. One. Two, you see representations of white men being romantic with African-American women, but you see a paucity or dearth or lack of representations of African-American men being romantic, proposing, things like this as well. Okay. So oftentimes whatever's disseminated becomes imitated. So we have to be careful of that as well.
That's interesting you say that, Michael. And Latoya, I want you to jump into the conversation here, because on the flip side, there is this conservative writer named Richard Hawk who said,
all right. So that's an excerpt there. We'll share another excerpt. We'll share another excerpt from on our show Monday or Tuesday. You can watch this. We'll post a link here for the full show. But if you go to foxsoul.tv, and just search for the Tammy Mack Show, it's there. The full show is there also, but we just posted the link here. But go to foxsoul.tv. And they have all the other shows there, the Cocktails and Queens and Claudia Jordan's show. And they have a number of different shows that start like in the evening. But Tammy Mack is on 5 days a week. So they want to bring me back in the next week or so also. All right. Look, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Remember, you can also support us through Cash App, $ the TheAHNShow through Cash App. If you donate through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the TheAHNShow, SHOW, and it'll say Michael and show my picture there. We still have our bundle pack at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. My 15 DVD bundle pack, the Black History Month bundle pack, where we deal with. It has 15 of my lectures, okay, all different topics. And that's right on our homepage as well. So it's right underneath the information about the online course. We have a lot of orders shipping out this week. Also, African-American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast and email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. So these lectures are good any time of the year, but you click right here for order here, and it shows you the 15 titles in this bundle pack. 3 of them deal with the film Black Panther. 1 deals with the origins of African American History Month and Dr. Carter G. Woodson. We have this one here dealing with the distortion of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The revolutionary will not be televised on the television. I have one dealing with Malcolm X, why he's still relevant today. This deals with the 3/5 Compromise of 1787. Okay, and the history of the Electoral College. This one deals with, this is a 4-hour presentation dealing with the history of different types of economic boycotts and economic withdrawal strategies that we have engaged in, redistributing the pain, how African Americans historically fought back with economic boycotts. This is Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. So I deal with some well-known and not so well-known women in our history from all different time periods. So those are just a few in the bundle pack. It's a 15 DVD bundle pack. The Michael M. Hotep Black History Month DVD bundle pack. We also have the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack that's on digital download and DVD as well as a 6 title bundle pack. All right, so we'll post a link here. So that's all at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And let me find that one here, post that one. All right, so look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you Monday night. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Peace.